Welcome to Talent Equals. Thanks for joining us. Well, can you believe it's been a year since we launched the podcast? And during that time, we've been joined by some fantastic guests, world-class entrepreneurs, CEOs, and authors. And, well, I often find myself quoting parts of those conversations because I'm cool like that. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be helpful and fun to bring together some of our favorite insights for your enjoyment? Think of it as an index of outstanding observations. And we'll keep doing this format throughout the life of the show because I think it'll be helpful not only for myself, but also for you guys. So I would love to hear your feedback and any requests that you have. So let's start with the Lionised and Evangelized life of the entrepreneur. It is many people's dream to run their own business, whether as a CEO or as a startup founder. The image of the entrepreneur is now akin to that of a rock star, a modern day t-shirt wearing celebrity on the cover of a magazine. On the outside, it looks like an ideal life, lots of freedom, money, and power. And it's no doubt that there are many benefits to being a founder and entrepreneur who secures millions in funding. But there is always a price to pay in any high-stakes job. So what is the reality? Is it all great? Is there work-life balance? What's the toll on you and those around you? I've selected some clips from two fantastic people. David Soloff, three-time serial entrepreneur who has already sold one business to Snapchat and is the founder of the new insurtech OTT Risk, who already has a famous billionaire investor backing him. And Andy Rea, CEO and founder of Munich Re's Digital Partners, who has selected and helped grow some of the world's most exciting insurtechs. Many are now the who's who of the insurtech scene. So without further ado, I give you David and Andy. So Andy, I've been fascinated to hear about your journey and all the things you've done. But maybe just tell what's happening next, Andy, because I know you've got some news, what's happening for you as we finish up. So yeah, what's coming next to you?
So I stepped out of Digital Partners from the 1st of December, which was part of my life plan. Everything sort of came together at the right time in that I'd been running the business for 4.5 years. It felt like it was time for change. When you build a business like Digital Partners, we were part of Munich Re, but we were also on the side, and the business began to look very like me. And you as a CEO, you have to be aware of the strength of your own voice. And I thought the business could do with someone else leading it. I also passed the big 5-0 in September.
Congratulations! Wow.
Very much. Yeah. And when I started work in my early 20s, I felt I would really like to go and do a PhD, but firstly, I didn't have any money, and secondly, I didn't really have a subject at that point. But at 20, looking forward to 60 just seemed impossibly far away. So I said, I'll work really hard until I'm 50, and then go and do a PhD, and have a different style of life. So I'm right at the beginning of that journey now. I'm sort of hoping to start a PhD sometime next year. I'm doing then also some non-exec and some advisory work.
So is this a form of retirement, Andy? Is this what we're saying? This is retirement at 50?
It's sort of, I think these days for people like us, I think retirement is not really a concept that makes sense anymore. I get retirement. If you spent 40 years doing a physically demanding job, then I think you have a right to stop doing that and to do what you like. My life has not been so physically demanding that I'd like to do something different. And for me, there's a big difference between being a CEO and being a non-exec director. And the difference is being a CEO is all consuming. It has to be your number one focus in everything. It takes precedence over other interests you might have. It very often takes precedence over family life. It takes over your weekends, and that is just inevitable. Even if you're not doing something, you're thinking about it. There's always stuff going on. Whereas being a non-exec director allows you, I think, to advise, to engage, to use your skills, to give something back to the industry that that sustained me, and just to have a slightly different pace of life.
And you've made this quite an exciting and brave choice at 50 to step away from this role that so many people would want. But how have you managed your well-being? And you can say terribly, but do you have any tools or what have you done to try and help create some balance in your life?
Honestly, the answer I think would be terribly. I'm skeptical of CEOs who claim they have balance. Most of the things I see from CEOs who are who claim to have mindful techniques, it tends to involve getting up at 3 a.m. and doing meditation and then going out for a run and so on. And this is all very fine as long as you have absolutely no family life and only sleep 3 hours a night. I think the reality is, as a CEO of almost any size business, but certainly a reasonable size business, you just are, you're not only busy, but you also have, an accumulation of stress. There is always stuff going on in your business. There is always bad news to deal with, because when things are going well, you don't need to know. When you spend your day dealing with the problems.
So how do you unwind then? What's your sort of your relaxation technique?
You retire at 50. I mean, to be honest, I never had a great relaxation technique. I suppose you have to try and take your mind off things. What you don't want to do is dwell on things. But I walk the dog. My wife used to say she would see me out of the window, and I would set off with the dog, and I would be, talking to myself, or rather talking to the dog, and I would chunter all the way through the walk. And if I was still visibly chuntering on the way back, she would know I'd had a bad week.
So that's an interesting type of.
The dog absorbs a lot of stress.
Well, hey, it's honestly not something that's to be sniffed at there. I think there's a coping mechanism there that being outside and walking and being in nature is a very important component of well-being. Certainly why I live in Devon. So you sort of taken this idea of seeing the value of data, but how data in its rawest form can be really meaningless, but has a lot of intrinsic value if it's structured and indexed in the right way. Transfer all that into meta markets, which is ultimately serving this huge beast that many don't know about, performance marketing, about the sort of the way that the internet is effectively funded in so many ways. That gets sold to Snapchat, sort of showing you that there's a real strong value in indexing that data. And that led to your next idea, iterating on, again, this kind of singular idea that you've talked about into premise, right? And that's
that, what's great is that after things have happened, you can clean up the narrative and make it sound like a very orderly and calm, logical progression. The reality is that it's bloody chaos. And, there's a near-death experience every 7 to 8 minutes. As an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley that I really respect, said, being a founder is one of the few jobs in the world that allows you to feel on top of the world in the morning and like you want to shoot yourself in the face in the afternoon. And I am. Sometimes the opposite is true. You actually want to do the shooting in the morning and top of the world in the afternoon. But invariably, you're going to see peak and trough in the same day. Yes. It's a dirty business. It's really it's brutal. So there needs to be a real magic to the idea. Otherwise, there's just no incentive to push through.
You did raise a nice point earlier on. I said flippantly said that you like living on the edge, but there's a definite truth to that. And then that I believe that anybody who's interested in true innovation and creating, they have to embrace this chaos. But also, and in that chaos comes failure, because out of the iterations of failure comes success, right? So I can see that in everything you're saying. Must be this becoming used to this constant push and pull and tearing down and building up, but trying to hang on, as you said, to a central thesis, a central idea that you believe is beautiful and has value, and that can help you move through these troubles.
That's the eye of the hurricane, right? The eye, that place of calm, or the center of all of the swirling chaos, you need to hold true to that, or be ready to abandon it if it's not proving out, and change it. Sometimes it's hard to know whether you're being persistent or reckless. Sometimes it's hard to know whether you truly are onto an idea and you're early and the world doesn't understand it, or whether you're just wrong. It's not like you can look at a sign that'll tell you what to do. So I think that actually is the nature of the risk. The nature of the risk is that you don't know when you need to pull out of the nosedive. You can't see the ground, whatever. Torture your own metaphor. But it's thrilling, and it is honest in that you do get to see an idea through if you're fortunate, right? You do get to attract capital and a team and customers and fill an important need. And if you're really, if you're one of the really few people, you're actually able to make a living at it.
There is a real pressure that comes along with running a business, especially when you have people relying on you for success, salary, and support. And you quickly realize that you can't do everything yourself. You need to have the right kind of people on board. Because in a startup or a small business, there is this ever-present sense of risk. Interestingly, with many of the people I've spoken with, many of the founders and entrepreneurs who grow companies, their key strategy to attract the very best people is the development of a strong mission-based culture. So let's listen to some thoughts from Andrew Engler, co-founder of Kettle, the insurtech helping to predict the ravages of wildfire in the tempestuous climate environment our world finds itself today, and Richard Leffley, the pioneer of microinsurance, whose work has delivered a much-needed, affordable insurance model to impoverished people in developing countries all over the world.
What is it like building a team, and has that been harder than you expected? What has gone into building the team that you've got? What are you learning about that? And what would you tell other people your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar. I mean, I've built teams up to like 40 people in past like roles and stuff like that. It's fundamentally different in COVID times when you can't even meet an employee in face, our potential employee face to face. I think we'll see a shift into like kind of like, oh, would you be able to consult for a bit and then come like work, because it's this great like trial period where someone can make money and do multiple things at once and then jump on full time. But it has been very, very different from past like hiring experiences where we have an influx of people wanting to join, because it is such like a core mission driven company and hits so many marks, and we're lucky to have like excitement around it and have articles in Forbes and like Fortune and stuff. It definitely, if you have a mission and vision behind it and people realize like this is something that I would love to wake up every single day and just do, the hiring part becomes a lot easier, I would say. I take a lot of influence from like, if anyone wants a great recommendation, there's something called like the Valve Employee Handbook that was put out. There's a company named Valve, and they own Half-Life and Steam and all these incredible software developments.
It's a video game maker. Valve is a video game maker, platform, right?
But they actually own like a video game store now, which is incredibly profitable. But Valve has this beautiful book that they created for all their employees, and it's really the way we look at it, because it's very horizontal structure and the way that they're structured, and it's created around like giving people massive amounts of empowerment and telling them like, figure out what's wrong with the company, like jump to the point of biggest need and jump in there and help out. So like find your place in the company and we're here to support you, like find it. But like, it's much different than like that we're hiring you for X role, you're only going to do X, come in and like do that position and stop like talking to this person, stop worrying about these problems. It's very much more like you have people hunting down the biggest issues and fixing them.
How have you found, Andrew, one of the perennial issues? You are recruiting in an area in reinsurance where people are very comfortable. It's a well-paid industry, right? And actuaries, I don't know if you're recruiting for actuaries and people like that, they're a risk-averse bunch. Have you found that to be still quite difficult as a hiring talent, or has that not been an issue for you?
That hasn't been an issue for us. And actually, I mean, look, we like to call actuaries are the original data scientists. Like there is an absolute love of what we've been doing, especially in these like incumbent companies. They have been nothing but incredibly supportive and great conversations because, you know, we're really just trying to bridge this gap between like the modern data science practices that have proliferated in capital markets and quant methodology and bring it to the industry that is the original like data science business. And it's really like kind of a beautiful marriage between the two. It's always weird to me when I see like startups saying like, oh, we're going to come in and take over the insurance industry and like kick out the incumbents. Like, no, you're not. Like these are incredible companies that have built massive billion-dollar balance sheets and have been protecting the world for decades. Like they know exactly what they're doing. And there's just a match to be made in terms of like this kind of future iteration that happens. So the companies that'll succeed are very much in partnership with them and in no way like, oh, we're going to compete and eat their lunch and you know, they'll die out.
I think the honest answer is that the good news is that an organization like Microchip probably attracts a certain kind of person. You know, because there are people that want to work in a social business that's having a positive impact, and that, you know, they get that kind of sense of achievement. And I think we probably attract those kind of people, and so we have a bias towards them. I think what we're looking for increasingly, and it's kind of interesting, is we're looking for people that can just have that kind of yes, I can do it kind of mentality. So we recently did some work with our team, and we did a kind of, you know, all these kind of analysis, and we were obviously trying to map out kind of who were the people in our team, depending on whether they were people, you know, extroverts, introverts, or whether they were detail oriented or they were kind of, you know, big thinkers. And, you know, we're plotting them on these kind of scales, and we use kind of 4 colors, you know, so we use red, yellow, green, and blue. And we put people in these categories. And the reason we do it this way is because, you know, it cuts across different cultural boundaries, and it helps people with different languages to understand kind of where they fit in. And it was really interesting because we've got a real spread of people, but of course we're a sales-led organization. So, you know, a lot of our senior leadership is quite sales kind of led. And it's been really hard to find people that are kind of sales-driven, but also compassionate. And you know, have that kind of desire to actually serve all people, you know, rather than just kind of hitting targets and things like that. And so we tend to look for people who have a kind of can-do attitude. And it's interesting, quite a lot of the people that come into our organization end up staying with us for quite a long time. And I think the reason they do that is because once we've hired someone who's got a kind of like, you know, a kind of can-do mental attitude, they quite often start off relatively junior positions and end up being country managers. So end of last year, we had our kind of country manager in Ghana who'd been with us for 7 or 8 years, kind of say, you know, look, I think it's time I stepped aside and went and helped my family run the family business. And we looked internally and we realized that actually, you know, the person that we wanted to kind of promote into that role was another woman. So the lady who was running the country was stepping aside. And the most obvious person to replace with was a local woman who had joined us straight from university as a kind of claims clerk, and had worked her way through the organization and just was such a go-getter, you know, and we put her in the role. And I said to her, look, you know, we're going to put you on probation here and give you this role. And we're in the middle of a COVID lockdown. And I said to her, look, I need you to go to the regulator and get this letter, you know, because we need it. I understand it's lockdown. I understand that the regulator is working from home and therefore it's going to be difficult. She said, no, not a problem. I'll get it for you today. And I said, look, don't overpromise, because, you don't know that. She said, no, I'll get it for you. And in an hour, she had a letter signed from the regulator. And I still to this day don't know how she did it. I don't really mind how she did it, but she did it.
When you are building a business and building a team, it's so important to have the right partnerships and management team around to support you. So selecting the early stage co-founders are really a make or break moment for a business. It's critical that you find someone who has shared values, because those lead to long-term relationships. They need to have a belief in the mission and be strong enough and determined enough so they will be resilient in the face of the winds that you will surely face. But it's critical that you don't just hire a carbon copy of yourself. You need somebody who brings a different perspective to help widen your sense of risk and to see the perils that may sink the ship on which you are both sailing. So in our next clip, Nicholas Suhr and Matthew Wardle of Casco share their journey of working together as co-founders. And Stephen Mendel, CEO of InsurTech bought by many, talks about promoting diversity in his management team to make them more robust and fit for the future. Honestly, that the idea of selecting your co-founder and selecting your co-founder well is incredibly important to the success of the business and also on the mind of a lot of people who are starting their companies. So, understanding each other and understanding each other's sort of way of looking at the world, I can see as being, really, really valuable. So when you decided to come together and sort of start working together, what were the things that you focused on that you kind of helped you think it was actually going to be what was going to work right between you two of you?
So I guess we kind of took it step by step, right? But I think the one thing that we did from the beginning, especially before we decided to do the jump, we were, and maybe I was, and Matt just agreed, I was very adamant about having a fixed number of working hours allocated to this project. I didn't care so much whether it was during the week or after the week. And I said, let's build this. But what this means, everyone 10 hours per week. Because I wanted to make sure, we didn't know how long things took and we didn't know what the output would be, but it was very much about that contribution because everyone likes to build a company in a bar and then, but then it's, Saturday and you have a tough working week. And that actually churned out quite a few people who were very interested in the project at the time, but couldn't commit. And I think it's that commitment to the thing. And I think that is what always persisted because our journey was also not a journey of a home run. We had a lot of iterations. If I look back at our journey, it all made sense and there was so much excitement and, it felt like each step was kind of getting closer to where we wanted to go and that I still very much feel like that. But kind of looking from the outside in, revenue didn't come as quickly as we thought. Business model didn't come as quickly as we thought. And understanding didn't come as quickly as we thought. So some people was like, why didn't you give up? And, I think it's that both of us were in the same part of our life, our 30s. We had the freedom to do it, but also the aspiration to do it. And, we just kind of kept at it whilst I would say probably others would have given up and have.
I think it's fair to say we also found quite quickly that we knew we would have complementary skill sets. I've always had a tech background and running teams background. Nick's always had a very business focused and insurance background. So we knew that our skill sets were complementary. But we also found quite quickly that actually we worked together both on the skill sets we assumed would be complementary, but also the others go. So I gave quite a lot of influence on what we should build as a business and how that should work. And Nick gave a lot of influence on how we should build the products and how that should work. So we actually we found that it actually worked extremely well. And probably I would say, if anything, I would actually say better than we expected.
Yep.
And what was the thing that surprised you the most about working together? What surprised you the most that was the most difficult part of working together?
I would say the thing that surprised me the most, how not difficult it was and still is. and Matt can attest. I'm an antagonistic person. I like to take. I don't like things sweltering. I like to take things heads on. It's not that I can't help it. It's just I just go into a circular thought process, and I just need to fix stuff. So, and I felt I don't know that we ever in this journey ever had we disagreed wholeheartedly about stuff, but no fallout, and this, mind you, with the business not really working for 3 years. So I think it was that how easy it was, and I think still is, and how I would say how little attention this relationship requires.
Yeah, I think both of us have a kind of quality in common, which is that even if we do have quite heated arguments about how something should have been done or something should be done, I wouldn't say argument, heated discussions, we should call them, about how something should be done, both of us are willing to then take it away and then think about it. And then actually, if we realize we're wrong, absolutely do 180 degrees on this and not kind of stick by what we think is to prove there's no kind of, that neither of us have a pride in making a decision that we thought originally. I mean, other than the "I told you so" comment,
we do
both enjoy.
Yeah.
And rarely is there an intuitive decision making required. Rarely is there a situation where there isn't proper information to enable you to make the right decision. In business, anyway.
Yeah, I suppose it's about then finding that information and that data, or creating the platforms and the infrastructure that can help with that. And I heard back to having a co-founder who's a CTO must help in many ways.
Correct. And we're very different. And that's also very important. In fact, we have a leadership team that are made up of a bunch of people for whom it is very hard to find what makes us tick together, but we really do. Different backgrounds, different experience sets, different histories in business and in academic life, and that's created a leadership team that has a very diverse outlook.
And was that a deliberate choice?
Absolutely.
And how do you do that?
So how do you do that? You do that for looking for areas where you don't have different thinking. So I'll give you a very good example. About 2.5 years ago, we realized that we needed a CFO. We'd never had a CFO as a business before, but we were growing and needed to create a leadership team position for a chief financial officer. The business at the time was run by 4 guys, and that was just because they had been the right people at the time. And it was very clear to me that other than the leadership team, we were a business that was 50-50 male, female, and that had been the right answer. But at the leadership team, that was not the case. And so I set out to find a female CFO who had insurance experience, hen's teeth.
Yes.
And I met 32 people before I found the right person. And did some very strange things to try and find the right person, including putting myself in some very unusual situations to enable me to come into contact with people who were different from me. To enable me
you got to tell us about those strange things, Stephen.
Okay,
please.
I will give you one, but I think it's the most public one. So it's International Women's Day. I think it's March the 8th, and it was 2018. And I went to a talk given by Nikki Morgan, who was the chair of the Treasury Select Committee at the time at the Law Society. Focused on women in leadership. 1,000 people in the room, 997 of them were female. And I got to the question time. I put my hand up and I was invited to ask a question, almost certainly because I was one of the only men in the room. And I put my hand up, I stood up and in front of everybody, I said, It's not really a question directly to Nikki Morgan. It's more a question to everybody else in this room. But I'm the chief exec of an insurance startup, and I'm looking for a female CFO. And if anybody in the room would be interested in applying for the role, or knows somebody who'd be interested in applying for the role, please come and see me. I'll be standing at the back of the room afterwards. And my question to Nikki is, how should I find the right person for this role? And sat down. And so I stood at the back of the room feeling very, very, very sad because I was completely ignored until Nikki Morgan herself walked up to me. And she said to me, that was one of the gutsiest things I've ever seen anybody do. Please, please let me know as and when you find the right person. And she introduced me to a recruitment firm who do female recruitment. As it happens, I already knew them. And said that she was very personally interested in finding out. Nothing to do with that event, but a couple of months later, I found the right person, Louisa Burrill, who I'm delighted joined us as our CFO and has been phenomenal for us. That night that Louisa accepted the job, I emailed Nikki Morgan to tell her that we'd found the right person. And within half an hour, she replied and said, I'm delighted. I was absolutely sure you would find the right person. Good luck to you. And it was very nice. And that is, I mean, really coming back to the question, it's really about doing diverse things to find diverse thinking. And it paid off enormously for us. And hopefully for Louisa too.
Yeah. Life and work are about looking back on the experiences that we've had and deciding if we could do something different, if we could have acted differently. That's where real growth comes. And so I find it really inspiring when I speak to leaders who recognize that they have a responsibility to nurture the next generation of leaders through sharing their own experiences and mistakes. So here's Markus Schmalbach, CEO of RiskX, sharing his advice for the next generation of insurance leaders. And Richard Leffley again, speaking about learning from your mistakes in order to grow and be better.
Can I ask you then, what would be your advice then for the next generation of insurance builders who are coming in as CEOs and may have a lack of experience? What would be your advice to the next generation of insurance builders?
Yeah, interesting. I would listen. I think listen is always a good advice. Listen to the people who are already in the market and then think of who is on the one hand your client, and on the other hand, with whom you are interested in working together. And of course, you have to listen and you have to be polite on the other hand as well. And if you say, I'm now coming with my, let's say it again, Wharton MBA, and I'm 25 years old and I'm wearing some red shoes and have my Apple laptop and now I'm disrupting the world, that's okay. Yeah. Alexander the Great wasn't older than you, but maybe the better approach would be getting in touch with the traditional market and first of all understand what you want to disrupt or find a better solution for. Because then it's much easier to building up great relationships with the existing market. Mm-hmm. Because just you say, I'm building up a startup and I have a better solution and here I am, the traditional market will not say, okay, you're right, this product is much better than our, so we'll go now and stage is yours. Of course not.
Yeah, I've heard this said before that partnerships are incredibly important in the future of insurance. And I suppose we talk a lot about disruption, and I wonder if that sometimes is conflated with sort of going it alone. But disruption can be done in partnership. And I did hear Pravina Ladva say on her media day from Swiss Re about the importance of Swiss Re, and there's the whole digital strategy will be about partnerships. It will be about working with organizations that can help them do new things in new ways, but ultimately we need to be cooperating with the sort of the foundations of an industry. Otherwise, smaller firms aren't really going to get going, right? It's a really difficult thing to do. So yeah, partnerships. that's really at the core of your business as well, right, Marcus? So
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Risk exchange hopefully will become an ecosystem at the end of the day, or should be. But there's even the idea is great. You need on the one hand the policyholders, and you need on the other hand the risk takers who are interested in working with us. So of course, partnerships is I would say the most important thing for us, and getting an understanding for both sides of the market. Of course, for the policyholders, but also an understanding of the risk takers and their appetite, and to see why they are perhaps not interested in working with us, or why they are interested in working with us. Because then perhaps it's a homogeneous market. If A says yes, maybe the reason why they say yes make absolutely sense for B as well. So, as I said, listening to the current market experts and the let's call them the real CEOs in the market definitely helps. If you have the opportunity of a chat with John Neal from Lloyd's for 5 minutes, as we had during the Fusion days, it's really interesting what he's telling you, and these are the powerful guys within the industry. So listen and look how you can, I will not say assist them, or how you can develop something that which make them or make you interesting, so that they have a need for working with you together.
But I think what's important is, and it's not all about failure. I mean, it is about learning from those mistakes, learning from, and actually for me, there's a great deal of joy in learning from those mistakes and having a bit of a laugh about them. And thinking, why did we do that? I mean, I remember one of the first products we ever launched in Zambia was a life insurance, and it was called Ntula, and it was for one person and 5 family members. And we thought this was a fantastic product because it was the first product where it covered 6. It covered these 6 people, and African families were quite big. And what we hadn't realized was that in the weeks and months before we launched the product, there'd been a huge number of stories in the local newspaper about kind of black magic. And of course, 6 is this number which is kind of linked to kind of black magic. And so when we launched our product and it was to do with death, everyone assumed that we were witches. And so we had a riot, and people, literally kind of like we had to get kind of evacuated from this small town because people wanted to kill us. So there's kind of like these kind of hilarious kind of, how did we get it so wrong? We were here to help people, and they wanted to kill us. I mean, so we've made so many mistakes along the way. It's been, and some of them are genuinely kind of weird and wonderful.
One thing that has stood out clearly to me throughout the course of the conversations over the last year is that in this early stage environment, there really is an importance that your leader has passion. Entrepreneurs and executives that are driven by a purpose and a mission, and then can convey that with passion and enthusiasm, really do make incredible contribution to the organizations that they support. They are able to generate much needed excitement for their product. They're able then to attract like-minded talent who are going to be investing their time and brain power in missions that at times will not be entirely sure to survive. And so in this next clip, I found the CEO and founder of the multi-billion valued insurtech WeFox, Julian Teicher. He speaks about his unusual journey into insurance and finding his purpose in what he does. And we finish off with the ever-inspiring and charismatic David Katz, founder of Plastic Bank, the company creating a new form of monetary value to help tackle the world's plastic crisis. Most people I speak to who are in insurance, I hear a very similar thing, which is like, I never dreamed of being in insurance. I never, thought about when I was back in school, thinking I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be an insurance man or woman. And I know that's true, but there is something enticing about the industry nonetheless. The people who are in it tend to stay in it for a long time and tend to find something. So I sort of wonder what's kept you in insurance then? Why are you excited to be in insurance now then?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously had to find purpose in what I do, because I wouldn't be able to just do something. And I was thrown into it. And, I remember these family parties, my dad being an insurance broker and my uncle being a pilot, right? And everyone, when growing up, was like surrounding my uncle, and he was telling all of these passionate stories about flying, right? And my dad was sitting in the corner all by himself. Everybody's scared that he would sell them something, right? So, I mean, the image of the insurance broker is screwed up. And I made it, my passion to help create a new image for the insurance advisor and help create a new image for the entire industry. And I really became passionate about that, plus the entire purpose of enabling people to be safe. So with technology, what we can actually do is return insurance to its core, which is, about safety and community, helping each other out. That entire purpose over the last century has been diluted. Why? Because money often dilutes purpose, right? And there was so much money in the game, and insurance CEOs, had to return profits, and essentially managed a money printing machine, where essentially for every dollar they got into the system, they would then reinvest that dollar into the capital markets, make more money, and pay out less than what was paid in. So essentially, it's just a money-making machine, and all you had to do as a CEO is just figure out how to get more money into the cycle. And the best way for such an abstract product as insurance is to get Salesforce and ask them, what do you need to sell as much insurance as possible to get as much money into my money-making machine, right? And they would tell you, make it as confusing as possible, make it as complicated as possible, so that I can essentially sell overpriced insurance products, that I can sell double coverage. That way I can bring you the most money, right? And that system worked for like 100 years, right? That purpose of now creating something truly customer-centric, and helping insurance advisors with technology to consult their customers significantly better with the right products, plus thinking even one step further of reinventing the entire insurance product from reactive protection, so financial protection from uncertain events. So the insurance experience is a really boring and terrible one, right? So you answer a couple of questions. You get a price. You buy a policy. You forget what's the fine print, obviously, because it's so complicated. Something bad happens in your life. And in the best case, the insurance company pays back money, right? So the entire experience is pretty shit. And with data from our devices, we're going to be able to turn insurance into proactive protection from likely risks, right? So we're going to be able to tell you about your risk profile right now and give you information about how to increase your risk awareness, to decrease your risk, live a safer, longer, and healthier life, right? And it's actually in the interest of the insurance company. It's in the interest of the insurance advisor. It's in the interest of the insurance customer. As a customer, I'm going to have a safer life. As an insurance company, I'm going to have a lower loss ratio, right? As an insurance advisor, I can essentially do the right thing and get rid of that image that has been created through insurance being this money-making machine without a soul.
What I'm in awareness of is that I'm confident that there have been countless amazing ideas, countless just world-changing, paradigm-shifting, humanity-shifting, society-shifting ideas that died because the person who had the idea was afraid. They felt it was beyond them. The ego mind showed up and said, "You can't do that. Who are you?" And the person believed it.
I think I resonate with that. I think for most entrepreneurs, actually, you talked about being an entrepreneur, and I wonder actually if that sort of crucible of, fear and, just giving it a go, but experiencing failure and getting back up again is sort of the crucible of being an entrepreneur.
There's no failure. There's only learning and becoming. That's all of it too, part of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I suppose maybe it's I think there's a kind of a narrative I hear you talking about, David, it's like changing the story. And, I think in all experience in life.
Well, I would argue that it's not about changing the story. It's choosing the story.
Okay.
It's not about, to change the story is to say that I accept some other story to begin with and then I change it. That's not the case. It's just that the way I view life. I view life as being a gift.
Yeah.
I view life as being a process of learning. I view life as being abundant. I view life as being infinite. That's the way that I just show up in the world. There is no choice. Well, there is choice, but just in the context here, it's not like I had to choose differently. I had to give myself the capacity to say, "Oh, no, that's super bad and hurtful and it's horrible and stuff, and then I'm going to choose something." No, that's as it is. There's more power in that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I suppose I would counter that. I think for a lot of people who may be set in a narrative, who are experiencing the world in a certain way,
yeah, totally.
and I think that's the point of, I think from my own experience of working with, my own development, and many adults have to change their development and they do that through changing a narrative. Yeah,
I agree. Yes, you have the moment to then to say, "Wait a second, that was a narrative I chose. Oh, hold on a second, let me choose something different."
Yeah,
I 100% agree. I knew that the end in mind there is that at some point, as you begin to practice that, you recognize that the first narrative was also a choice. You chose that narrative. It didn't come with a narrative. You just chose it to be a way. And then what happens over the course of time is that your choice changes at the outset.
Yeah. I remember interviewing I've interviewed a few entrepreneurs on the show, and one with David Soloff, where he talked about, being an entrepreneur, there's nothing like it. In the morning you can be on the top of the world, but in the afternoon you can feel like you want to shoot yourself in the face. And it's like, and I could really understand it. Half the time I think I'm flying high, and then, a client pulls the rug out from underneath you and you're like, damn, where did all that joy go? But that is an allegory for life in that story. That's an allegory for all of the experiences we have. And I did really resonate with this kind of the hearing you talk among other things, because I'm thinking to myself, plastic, what a a horrendous thing, right? But then I think of all the good it does as well. How it's become a sort of a hermetically sealing product, which has allowed for transportation of, kind of medical goods, and, it's lightweight and
space flight and all kinds of stuff. Please, the plastic is amazing.
Exactly, right? Isn't it interesting how I know I've got it. It's around me always. It's my headphones, it's in everything we're using. But at the same time, it's in the water and it's killing us. And it's like,
so it's not the plastic. Come on, it's the way we view it. It's the way we disregard it. I'll ask the question again. If every piece of packaging or every piece of material you saw was $5, how many would you see in the environment? How many would you see in the water? No, none.
Yeah.
It's zero to do with plastic. It's not the plastic degrade. It's us and our carelessness and our lack of value over people and thing and life. And really, people know that it's degrading to the environment. They know that it's killing, the gift of marine life, and yet they still discard it. It's us, man. It's got zero to do with the material as it does anywhere else in the world, too. It's just so easy for people to want to blame someone else.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Talent Equals. It's been a real pleasure revisiting some of our previous interviews. I think we might do this again at some point. I would be interested to hear what you think. As always, please do share any topics that you'd like to hear about. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or leave a note on Apple Podcast reviews with your feedback. Thank you for listening to the Talent Equals podcast. Please do give us a review on your favorite podcast player. It really helps us with reach. And until then, have a wonderful morning, day, or night, wherever you are in the world.